Welcome to the Nectar podcast, discussing the things we think about Hull City AFC.
Okay. It's the Nectar podcast. Welcome along if you're watching us live on Periscope, or indeed if you've found the Nectar YouTube page and you're watching us a little later on via that. And of course you may just prefer the audio and not look at our three mugs at any point during the podcast, and why wouldn't you? So yeah, the audio is still available on SoundCloud and on iTunes. Just the three of us, as you can see, and eventually we'll hear this week after an international break. I hate international breaks. I want City to play again as quickly as possible, and you're glad, Andy, that you've wanted City to play again as quickly as possible. When they come back from an international break, all the players who've been on international duty are unscathed, and then they put in albeit only a second half performance, but nonetheless a performance like that to win an absolutely crucial game.
The win itself was crucial. It's interesting you clarified that it was an international break, because when all the players came back, it was rather as though they'd not played for several months rather than just a fortnight. The first half was worryingly tepid, and I think when you're in a situation like ours, one thing that you would hope for is a bit of urgency and a bit of determination to make things happen when you know you have to make things happen. And that was strangely lacking in the first half. We created so very little. It's not that it was necessarily a bad performance, it was just a nothing performance, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was. It was quite a turgid first half, and not just from City either. I mean, West Ham offered very little. It was a low wattage game. And I guess that's what made it all the more frustrating, that we cheaply conceded a goal, because, you know, West Ham seemed content to canter about at 0-0. I know they had that chance with Snodgrass where I thought he was marginally offside, although it was difficult to tell at the time from the east stand. But they weren't creating a great deal. They weren't cutting us open, and City weren't doing either. It was just all a bit of a nothing. Yeah, maybe the players was disassembled and they've been in storage for the last 14 days. Because it was as if, I mean, Lazar Markovic looked like, in patches in the first half, looked like he'd never played football.
He's getting on my nerves, is Markovic.
And looked like he never wanted to play football again. But there's the bizarre thing about Markovic. He had a 65-35% game on Saturday, and the greater percentage he wasn't a part of it. But when he was a part of the game, when he could be bothered and interested, he was excellent, because it was him that, you know, started the move for the first goal. I'm sure we'll come to the second half later, because we do like to squeeze as much misery out of a turgid first half as we can, but he just wasn't very good from an entertainment point of view. But to paraphrase Winston Churchill, what we really need at this point is victory, and nothing but victory will do. And it didn't feel like victory was coming even before West Ham took the lead. But then again, you know, it's a game of two halves, isn't it, Saint? We, you know, it is a game that can change.
I didn't realise it was called Saint and Beckham. That was far more like David Beckham than it was Jimmy Green.
Well,
a very good David Beckham, I must say.
Well, fair enough. I got the rough geographical region correct. It's not Saint, so
the
you
south.
Sound Pakistani or something. that wouldn't have been what I was going for.
Okay.
So yeah, it was an odd one. I mean, Markovic had one of his most effective games, but while still not really, I think, playing well for more than 35% of it. He is a frustrating player, and if you were to just do like your own version of fan cam and just watch him for a game, I think you might explode with rage. But when he is interested, he can be exceptional.
All the previous clubs, with the possible exception of Luton Town, that Curtis Davies has played for, their fans have said he's always prone to a defensive error that makes you worry whether he's really sort of in the top bracket or not. This is a guy who's been in the England squad, as we know, and has been a very, very, very strong and consistent defender for us. But that complete misjudgment of the ball that allowed Andy Carroll a complete doozy of an opening goal was worryingly poor, wasn't it?
It was a funny one. Firstly, Curtis Davies, I guess he's not in the top bracket of defenders, because he's playing for City, who are about as likely to go down as stay up. He's not quite broken into the England squad. There's better options than him, I guess, and that is probably because he makes mistakes like that. But it was an absolutely horrible one. I think even if you lose a header to Carroll, he's probably not going to score that, or it's going to have to be a very good header to score under pressure with your head. First time from what, maybe a dozen yards, was it? But when you give him the opportunity to chest it down, Carroll may be a big lump, but he's also quite good. He's got decent feet, good touch. As soon as he chested it down, I thought it's straight away goal. In that split second of whoa, when you realise what's happened.
You'd expect any striker to be good when they've got that amount of time, and Davis's ricket sort of took him out of the game to the point where he had the time to chest it down, pick his spot, and thump it. I think we've been a little bit unfair on Davis. I mean, to me, Davis is one of the finest City defenders of all time, and I wouldn't say across his City career he's been particularly error-prone. Defenders are always going to be responsible for some goals, so yeah, we can always come up with some instances where he's mucked up and we've conceded. But you know, a screw up to that point, I think, has been
rare.
very, very rare.
But that wasn't a unique mistake.
No,
that's all I'm saying.
I'm not suggesting it was, and it was bizarre. It was if he froze and had to reboot in a split second, because I just couldn't understand it, because it didn't feel as if anything particular was going to happen from that moment. You thought Davis is going to head this away, move gone, and then
it wasn't a windy day. It wasn't a particularly dipping ball. It didn't take a bounce, an awkward bounce. It was a single sort of high ball over the top. There's, maybe we can look too much into it, but it was just a mistake. You don't, even if he's not in the top brass, and we know he's not, but even you don't expect a top flight defender to misjudge a ball quite as spectacularly as Davis did. Maybe he was worried about Carroll before it even had chance. Maybe he was too busy concerning himself with Carroll and forgetting about what to do with the ball.
There's every possibility. I mean, Curtis Davis is a very good defender, and for what it's worth, I think he makes fewer massive errors like that at City than he has at most of his previous clubs. He always felt like a mistake waiting to happen until he joined City. Perhaps I just view him more charitably now that he is playing for City. Yeah. That's always possible. But it is possible. He's a human. He was spooked by Carroll. It can happen. Carroll is both massive and quite good, and those are two things that can play on your mind, even if you are an experienced centre half. It was a bad mistake, and it's rare.
Apropos of Curtis Davis, I'm really enjoying his burgeoning media career. I know this has got nothing to do with City.
He might need it for a bit more now.
But you bitch.
Well, no. I don't appear to be the only one who thinks that. A lot of the comments on Periscope are saying that Davis won't play again this season. He's now our fourth choice defender with Dawson fit again. Well, there's Ranocchia, there's Maguire, there's Dawson.
But the thing is, it depends what prism you look at Dawson through. If we're looking at him through his career and through the early part of his City career, but then he's a great defender. But he stunk at times earlier this season. He's had the same decision-making problems that Davis has had this season. And maybe it's just age catching up to him, I don't know. With Davis, who knows? It could be as much that he felt a little bit uncomfortable being a bit more left than he's used to, because he does tend to be a bit more central. But I wouldn't put Dawson as a shoe-in to replace Davis coming back, because I don't think Dawson has had a particularly strong season, and he is starting to look as if there's cracks in him, and it's his decision making that's worried me more, because it's something that you've always felt Dawson is completely dependable. He's somebody you don't need to worry about.
The upshot of it is, though, I mean, I know that Silva changed it at half-time on Saturday, but if he goes back to three at the back when all four centre-backs are fit, who's the one on the bench? It's almost certainly going to be Davis.
Well, Davis has done his chances no good, has he? If there was a toss-up before Saturday, then he may well find himself on the losing end of that.
It is between Dawson and Davis, though. It's unquestionably so. I mean, they are sort of two peas in a pod in terms of their experience, their age. They've been on fringes of England squads without ever really getting very far, albeit Dawson did go to a World Cup as a last-minute replacement for Rio Ferdinand. They are very similar characters. They're from the same sort of mini generation of footballers, and it's kind of one or the other.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, Ranocchia has been highly competent, far better than we anticipated. I don't think he's been outstanding. I just think he's done simple things very well.
Is this begrudging praise from a man who wasn't impressed with the signing in the first place?
Absolutely not begrudging, because all I could judge him on was when I'd seen him play previously, and he'd been an absolute horror show, and I'd been waiting for it to happen for City, and it simply hasn't. So there has to come a point where you say, all right, he's done pretty well. I think City are playing slightly less tactical football than he's used to, and he's playing on instinct, and he's got that instinct. He's having a. I don't think he's been outstanding, but he's been decent for City, and that'll do.
Okay.
I mean, Maguire's not flawless. He does make some bizarre decisions too, but
But he's learning the game as he goes along.
Yeah,
He's got nearly a decade on Dawson and Davis.
Exactly, and if you're choosing Maguire over Dawson and Davis, I would agree with you. It would be one of those two in the frame. I just don't think it's as a shoo-in as you would think it would have been at one point that you'd choose Dawson over Davis anymore. And I say that with a great deal of sadness because I love Michael Dawson.
Andy Robertson said after the game that Marco Silva gave them a mighty bollocking at half time. And I mean, he clearly knows his stuff. Silva. He's a very astute character. He's very determined. He's very sort of single-minded. But somehow I'm actually finding it quite hard to imagine him giving everybody an almighty. Not at least because there'll be a fair few language barriers going on in there. But it's good that he did. I mean, he's seen as
anger's a universal language, Matt.
Fair enough.
Hairdryer treatment, teacups, universal.
Fair enough. But, I mean, you think about the criticism he got purely by dint of nationality, and now we didn't agree with any of that, didn't condone any of that, but one of the problems with being a foreign manager is being able to communicate to 11 people all at once, as opposed to having to go through one at a time, maybe with the odd interpreter here and there. I don't know how it works. But, presumably, it wouldn't, as Les has alluded to there, Andy, it wouldn't matter too much what he was saying, as long as the tone of his message at half-time got across, which was, you're all dreadful, sort it out.
Disapproval is easy to understand.
It can be done through a series of grunts and actions and gestures.
Yeah, it can, and it's interesting that Marco Silva did choose to deploy that, because I would have thought, judging him on the first impressions that we're still gaining, he wouldn't be a manager to really go mental at half-time. He would be still quite calm and collected, okay, a flash of steel here and there, as any leader of men would require, but I wouldn't have thought he'd be a shouter and a baller. Now, if he did do that, and if we're understanding what Robertson has said correctly, and that he did go off on one of them, two things are interesting about it. Firstly, that he has got that ability as a manager, and secondly, that the players thought, shit, we better sort this out, because this isn't going well. He's annoyed. We really have to do something about this.
And it's not something you can do all the time. You look at the opposite bench, and what's his bloody name? Bilic looks like a man who's ranted his guts up several times this season for West Ham in the dressing room, and it's absolutely had no effect, to the point where it's played out now and people just probably roll their eyes and get on with it. With somebody like Silva, who is normally calm and collected, it really has an impact when somebody that sort of loses it a little bit, and it is one, because it wasn't a great half, but it was a turgid half in terms of the standard of football. I don't think necessarily it was rancid in terms of the effort. So it was an interesting one that he chose this one to go for it. Maybe he's a man that really loves his 3 years without a home defeat record, and he just ain't having that broken.
Which is absolutely insane, isn't it, that record? And people have pointed out an awful lot after yet another home win for City at the weekend. Just out of interest, if Vito Manoni is a Serbian warlord, do you think that Slaven Bilic is a Croatian warlord? With an earring.
I'm pretty certain he's got war crimes on his sleeve.
I mean, somebody's made a very valid point that it's the same for an English manager, this language
He's never
barrier.
managed in Srebrenica, I'll say that.
It's the same language barrier for an English manager, obviously, but ultimately players come to play in a particular country and are obliged to learn that language. And Silva's no different, but I'm wondering whether he's got the terminology to get it all across to every single player at once, rather than having to pick through it one by one. But the principle's the same.
I think Les is right. It's the tone and your obvious demeanour that is the most important thing, not which precise words you use. I'm sure that after he's given them a good bollocking, he has then come up with a plan for it.
Well, exactly. He's backed up the bollocking with a massive tactical switch, which worked. I mean, he could do no wrong from half-time onwards.
Sorry, I was just thinking about the time when my girlfriend told me off for calling the next door's cat in our garden the C word, and she said, it doesn't understand you, you could just make a loud noise. Maybe that's how it works with Marco Silva as well. Maybe he doesn't need to, have a particularly northern choice of profanity. It could just be the tone.
And footballers are cats.
Ginger ones that try and kill squirrels.
As long as you
in
said
their
cats
garden.
and not an alternative name for cats, that's perfectly fine. But yeah, the tactical switch to 4 at the back, and I mean that equalising goal. There was an element of good fortune to it, but Robertson still needed to make that run, and he made that run beautifully.
I choose to believe it was a moment of genius by Grzyski.
You're wrong though, aren't you?
Maybe. I may be wrong. I really want it to happen, and I really want it to happen for all the Hull-dwelling Poles who are coming every week, because quite frankly, if they stop coming, we'll be closing the East Stand next season as well. There was that many on the back row of the East Stand with us.
It was great as well, Les, wasn't it? Because we were stood directly in line with Robertson's shot, so as soon as he struck that, you thought, oh, just got a goal.
Yeah, it was absolutely beautiful. Going back to Markovic, who had a pretty frustrating afternoon till then, it was a lovely ball. It had a great piece of vision. And many people who've got the kind of vision to play that ball that he did, I felt. Was it a heavy touch from Grzyski who was trying to set the man on? Was it his piece of genius? It was a no-look pass? I don't know.
It was a great finish for a guy who's not renowned for it. When he's been in those goal-scoring positions, Robertson's been known to slice and to sky quite a lot. It was a super cool finish.
It was, and like you say, Robertson's missed some bad ones in the past because his approach to shooting seems to be kicking real hard.
Yeah.
That might have worked for Elliott. He's no Stuart Elliott.
That's his first Premier League goal. I mean, I think it's his 5th goal for City. I can't remember them all. I mean, he scored one against Man City in the League Cup when we got absolutely slaughtered there. It was a late consolation.
Cool finish as well,
it was.
wasn't it?
He also scored. Didn't he score against Brentford in the Cup, in the League Cup, or was that a Championship goal? It might have been in the Championship, mightn't it? When we got promoted. And he also scored in the playoffs at Derby. In the first semi-final, which eventually turned out to be the one that actually got us to Wembley, didn't it, last season? That's his first goal in the Premier League.
Well,
the one thing I thought was interesting was when we clearly switched back to 4 at the back, I thought, well, that's it of Robertson getting forward, and then he pops up ahead of Grzyski for a superb finish. So.
Scored at Reading as well. Thank you, Periscope, for bringing that one up.
Can I throw in a quick mention for Hernandez, whose deft little touch kept the move going? I thought Hernandez played a beauty of a ball to Nias
twice
lately.
he's done that, isn't it? Because we were walking to the game and we were talking about Hernandez's return ball for Nias.
Yeah.
And we were saying, did he mean that? But he essentially put a similar return. Well, granted, it wasn't right in, put somebody in a goal scoring situation, but it created a goal scoring situation. So maybe, Hernandez has got more football in nous than we give him for, and he isn't just a finisher, like a 6-yard box predator type player.
Nice to see Robertson score against a club that tried to buy him at the start of the season. And it was nice to see him celebrate it properly as well. Then Snodgrass, of course, who also West Ham tried to buy and this time succeeded. Aside from the first half header, which he probably should have done better with, irrespective of whether the flag was going to go up or not, what did you make generally of his comeback?
There was nothing to make anything of. It was strange because Snodgrass is the sort of player who, even on an average kind of day, is always making stuff happen, and things just tend to occur when he's around. He's got that kind of combative attitude where incidents occur and players get sucked in and the referee's never usually far away. But he just didn't do a damn thing, did he?
No, he was a non-entity in the game.
Can I ask you both a question on this then?
Go on then.
Is he still, or was he ever, I suppose, but I think he certainly was a candidate at the time of his departure, our player of the season?
Tex Davis was our player of the season once, and we've just spent ages having a go at him.
That wasn't the question I asked you, though.
No, true, but I thought I'd get it in there anyway.
It might have been our player of the season in a completely different season, maybe.
He was well up there, wasn't he? Who else had a better first half of the season?
Certainly top scorer as well, and maybe only Nias that's going to potentially catch that.
Has he been missed?
We've gone about things differently.
If Grzyski could take better dead balls, I would say no, but he hasn't so far.
Yeah, we certainly miss his set pieces, and that was always a big part of his game. I think we're just trying to go about things in a slightly different manner without him, and we've had no choice, I suppose.
And the photograph that was taken of the City fan mocking him as he sort of put his head down and hid in the West Ham dugouts. Do we unanimously approve of such an action by that particular City fan?
I don't know, because I didn't boo Snodgrass, and I still don't really know what to make of him more.
I don't think I've ever booed an ex-player, no matter how much of an ex-player of hatred he is.
You are a kind soul.
I know. I mean, I even sort of rolled my eyes and tutted slightly when Dean Marnie gave us all the cup tier nonsense after he scored against us for Burnley. And I remember Ian Waterson stood next to me. I've never heard anybody, even Tony Dutton, swear so many times in 10 seconds flat as much as Ian Waterson did at that
I'd
point.
like to give him a run for his money.
Just to clarify, Matt, you tutted and you rolled your eyes.
I tutted and I rolled my eyes, yeah. Yeah,
well,
that's the sort of outcry you get in Headon, I tell you. But seriously, I mean, what do you think of that photograph? What do you think of that action? I mean, you know,
it's a good photograph. You know, it's a good form of play.
You wouldn't even if you back up everything that you do, if you mock a player like that, if you are then photographed and publicised doing it, you're not going to be happy, though, are you?
I think the chap from Newland Ave.
If that had been you
from Newland Ave,
if that had been you who'd gone viral, being photographed mocking Snodgrass like that, would you have been worried, embarrassed, or anything like that? Concerned?
I don't think I'd have been concerned at all. I think
because football does turn us into completely different characters for the rest of the week.
Well,
you wouldn't be like, yeah, I know.
I like to think I'm a fairly consistent knobhead throughout the week.
Don't worry, Les, we can confirm this.
Oh, okay, that's fair enough. Yeah, my missus might confirm that as well. No, I think in the hashtag lad bants era, that kind of thing's good. I just personally don't feel it was justified. I know there came a point where Snodgrass said he wanted to go, but I think that's after City spent numerous opportunities when they were the exclusive team that could have tied him down, and we didn't want to. And if you show a player that you don't really want them, then why wouldn't they move? I don't relish the fact that he moved, but I don't blame him because I think City behaved in a Andy trademark squalid manner. It's funny, you know, we're completely cynical of every utterance that comes out of Ehab Allam's mouth, but we're apparently believing him that Snodgrass agitated for a move. I think it highlights the Allam's lack of ambition rather than it does Snodgrass being a snake. I did enjoy the frogs are better than snakes tweet. You know, I quite like the the reference to Ranocchia versus Snodgrass, but the whole branding Snodgrass a snake thing feels a bit contrived and forced to me. I think what happened on Saturday was the happy outcome. He just simply wasn't an entity in that game.
What about the reaction when his number went up though and he walked off the pitch? Because there were boos, weren't there?
There were boos.
I mean, is Snodgrass, how if you put it in percentage form, Les has talked about how City spectacularly failed to do their job properly and time down to a decent length deal. So
we're currently in the process of doing that with Silver at the moment.
If we put it in ratio form, how much of Snodgrass's move to West Ham was Snodgrass's doing, and how much would you say was City's doing?
I'm usually happy to blame Allam entirely for absolutely everything. I see no reason to change my mind.
But if there was boos for Snodgrass, then that suggests that the majority of supporters taking any interest whatsoever in Snodgrass going off the pitch disagree with you.
You tend to only boo a former player if secretly he's still wanting to play for you.
Oh, it's quite profound, Andy.
Indeed, I like it.
For myself.
Psychological deconstruction. Courtesy of the Amber Nectar podcast.
Indeed, let's swear a bit and balance it all
out. No swearing. We're doing awfully well without. And then somebody made actually two lovely comments. You talked about that little soundbite that you heard at the weekend. Somebody put on the Amber Nectar site as a response to things we think that every day is April Fool's Day if you Ehab Allam, which I think is an absolutely brilliant phrase.
Thank you.
After the illiterate correspondence that's gone out about the membership scheme, which I'm sure Les has got plenty to say on later. Somebody else made a lovely comment that Ranocchia's winner was a carbon copy of Craig Dudley's winner, of Craig Dudley's winner for City, which I think was against Carlisle, a famous late goal in the Great Escape season, where a low and not especially well hit corner was somehow reached the first head beyond the near post and was angled into the near post side of the net. And
it was a decent header from Ranocchia, but if you were, if you had anything to do with coaching West Ham's defence, you'd be pretty appalled that it was able to travel along that angle with nobody getting some body part in front of it. But, remember what I said about Ranocchia, I know people want to say, you got it completely wrong, but what I said was I want City's first outfield Italian to be really, really good, and I'm pleased that it's working for him.
It was a very good header because although West Ham were terrible in preparing for it. The player who was initially stood closest to Ranocchia actually just stopped watching the game. But he wasn't watching Ranocchia either. I'm not entirely sure what had caught his attention.
Maybe his phone had vibrated in his shop.
Maybe he was bored and he'd gone for an early pint, like you often do when you're bored, when you're not watching a game anymore.
Well, to be fair, how many times have I been justified with that down the years?
Well, quite a few. Although you did miss a goal at Wembley as a result of doing that. But anyway, we digress. And it was it an unexpected winner? Was it against the run of play? I mean, how would you put it?
If anyone was going to score, I think it would have been us. But I didn't really think anyone was. No one looked really like it. When Grzycki missed his shot from the rebound off the post, I thought that was probably the game's last very good chance gone.
And it was a hell of a timely goal as well. When you look, all right, Palace unexpectedly won at Chelsea, but they're gonna suffer a couple of rickets before the end of the season, even if they are in good form at the moment. Sunderland are doomed, and for Swansea and Middlesbrough to get a goalless draw the next day was beautiful.
Palace winning and City winning, I can accept the Palace win just because of the arse falling out of Schwinkter. That would have happened in the Wearside region. And Sunderland have got to go. They've fouled up the Premier League for far too long, and no strike has been nice to ill children. Is going to save them this year, I don't think. It's time Sunderland went.
And some faint misogyny from the manager as well has come forward in the last 24 hours, which doesn't put them in a good light.
The whole club just needs to get out of the Premier League and decide what it is that they want to do in the next 5 years, because this constant finishing 17th isn't doing them any good. Obviously, if they finish 17th this season, it does us no good either. So it's just best for everybody if they get relegated.
As far as Palace winning is concerned, I mean, somebody said it's the only negative of City's weekend, but ultimately, it can't be that much of a negative if there's nothing you can do about it. You know, all you can do is win your own games, and City's fixture list is kindly enough this Saturday accepted. Kindly enough, up to the last week of the season to be able to get out of this mess that we're in at the bottom of the Premier League without having to worry about anybody else except the opposition on the pitch with us at the time.
I agree completely, but it's there's probably 3 teams now trying to avoid one place. If you assume that Middlesbrough and Sunderland have gone, and anybody above Palace has gone the other way.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, I mean, if we get these 6 points out of 6 by beating Middlesbrough on Wednesday night, then we're, I think there's at least one of the teams immediately above us who've got Arsenal or Liverpool or somebody. I can't remember now.
Tottenham.
Yeah, but I don't mean Swansea. I'm talking about the teams like West Ham and
But if Palace can go to
Bournemouth.
Chelsea and win, we can't expect. Football doesn't work the way we plan it in our
But
heads,
there's not many of those. There's far more expected results than there are unexpected results, and therefore, having had, that's just logic, isn't it? That's linguistic logic, and by that token, therefore, we're going to have lots of games and lots of results on Wednesday and this Saturday and in coming weekends that are going to go the way the form dictates.
Well, our running's the best, I think, out of everybody. So
I mean, get Man City out of the way on Saturday, and then you would assume that Silva's got a chance with every single game we've got remaining, up to Tottenham's visit on the last day of the season. Yeah. And let's just hope we don't need anything by then.
You said a key thing on Saturday, Andy, at half-time, when you said if we lose this game, it obliges us to win an away game, and do you see us doing it? And I'm not convinced. Thankfully, Silva's home form just might well be enough to save us, but surely we've got to have the ability once more by the end of this season to pick up something away. I mean, we've gotten results at Manchester City before. You can't tell me we can't fluke a 0-0 draw or something. Just get something.
Just a point at Stoke would be nice. I don't think we're not going to win every single remaining home game, are we? That's impossible. Even if you take Tottenham out of the equation, someone somewhere is going to come to a team that's in the bottom.
Well, who have we got at home still? After Middlesbrough, we've got Sunderland, we've got Watford.
Watford are a good team. We can't just imagine we're going to win that game.
And we've got Spurs. Is that it, the home games? And then the away games are Man City, Stoke, Southampton and Crystal Palace. I'd put all those home games up to Spurs are more than winnable, surely.
They are.
Marco Silva hasn't lost a home game for 3 years. He's not going to start now against bloody Watford, is he?
That doesn't make it a given, though, does it?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Watford are a better team than us. They'll probably start that game favourites.
And we only have to draw that game, and we need something from an away game.
Yeah.
The away game, presumably. I mean, the problem is with the Palace away game. Even though on paper it's the most appropriate one to aim for, it's a bit late in the season. It's the last away game of the campaign. We need to be looking at the trip Man City obviously is a little bit, I mean, despite what Palace did at Chelsea, Man City might be a bit beyond us, but we need to be looking at the trip to, for example, Stoke or Southampton to try and get something necessary.
Just for a point, just to
Momentum?
Well, yeah, I think so, because we can't go to Crystal Palace having lost all of our away games in the meantime and then suddenly imagine we're going to produce something. And if we go to Palace needing something and we don't get it, then we might need something on the last day against Tottenham. And
yeah,
it's possible, and I would at the start of the season have taken the season going to the last day.
Okay.
But I'd rather it was done a slightly more.
We need to sign Damon Doy and David Stockdale before we go to Palace. Clearly.
Get on it, Mr. Silver.
Absolutely. All right. A couple of things out of the administrative side of the club, should it exist. Well, let's take the most recent bit of information, bit of news first. And the club have invited representatives to come forward to form a new supporters committee that is going to meet 4 times a year to talk about various supporter-related issues. Name changes, social media, branding don't appear to be on this agenda whatsoever, unsurprisingly. There's not an awful lot, it would appear, to do with ticketing and memberships and so on, although it's not exclusively being ruled out. It's the usual things that Paul Duffin used to hate talking about, like pies and beer and parking and turnstiles and things like that.
But if you work for the club now, that's the only thing you want them to talk about, because you don't want them to talk about the real topics, which makes the whole endeavour thoroughly pointless.
Is it completely pointless? I mean, is it just going to be going over old territory? I remember that time when you went to meet Assam Alam and got all those reassurances, and then he spent the next however many months and years completely blanking you and doing the exact opposite of what he promised. Are we going to end up with that sort of situation again?
They're going to consult the fans after taking the decision to close down the West Stand Upper. What's the point of City fans wasting their breath? We've given a lot of our free time over the years for such endeavours, and a lot of people say, oh, you do it because you want to feel special and you want to feel all of this, but generally we did it because we wanted the club to be represented and to have people that would ask us questions and we'd then articulate it on their behalf. It was never really about, oh, we've met Adam Pearson or that kind of stuff, because big deal, quite frankly.
I don't think that Ehab or anybody else as representative is going to take any advice from you about what the away kit should look like next season, for example.
Well, that's wrong, isn't it? Because I'm fairly sure I know more about away kits than Ehab Allam. I'm sure I know something about having a modicum of ambition and not closing an entire stand.
While at the same time claiming that attendances and value for money is improving. I mean, the man's either a fool or taking us for a fool.
Or both.
Yeah. Either or.
It could be either or.
Fools never think they're the fools, do they? So.
What's on? You're very profound as well. Fools rush in where angels fear to tread, or whatever it is. What about this bit of literature that came out last week?
Call it literature, to be honest.
All right then. Bit of badly subbed literature. How about that?
That's the funniest thing.
The words on a piece of paper, albeit a digitised piece of paper, with lots and lots of appalling spelling and semantic issues and so on. But the upshot of it was about memberships, and it was about the West Stand Upper. What do you make of it all?
It's complete bollocks.
Excellent. Les? Ditto.
Honestly, primary school kids would be ashamed of that. And that was an official communication by a Premier League club. I mean, I could rant and rave about it, but it's just tragically sad that. I mean, to me, it speaks to the level of disdain the administration at the club have got for the supporters. Because, if you value the person who you're sending a message to, you bloody run it through a spell checker. It's a 15-second process. Or you ask somebody to, read through it and say, I'm using effect and effect in the same sentence. Am I using it correctly? No. Have I spelled 8 correctly? No. Have I spelled indefinitely correctly? It just there's a subtext of contempt about it, and that's about as much as I can say.
They are used to getting words wrong. For example, like the name of the club. For example.
They don't understand no when the FA say it. That's a fundamental lack of knowledge that they've got. Dweebs.
Next season, we're going to be configuring our stadium in terms of who can access which areas in exactly the same way as a rugby league club. And we could be in the Premier League doing that. And people still say that Ehab Alam and Assam Alam shouldn't be run out of town.
Well, there aren't many, are they? And those people do appear to be mentally deficient.
Okay.
Well, you'll get no quarrel from me on that. Why, if you've got ambition, are we not trying to fill the...
You might have answered your own question.
Well,
there.
it's absolutely preposterous.
The Elms have got no ambition. They're not interested in the club doing well. They're interested in the club getting money from the Premier League. And the sad thing is, even if we get relegated, we'll still get some money from the Premier League for 2 seasons.
I mean, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind. If we'd not won the playoff final at Wembley, we'd still been in the Championship. And those same buyers had come forward, albeit with less money because we were a Premier League club. The Allams would have snapped their hands off. It's purely because we managed to get back into the Premier League that they are still here, while of course still telling us that the club is up for sale and has been up for sale since 24 hours after the FA said no. You know, it's old territory. We scraped through it God knows how many times, but it remains a completely salient point, doesn't it? The Allams are here for entirely the wrong reasons.
Yes, and this was supposed to be a gift to the community, and it seems rather much to be more about a gift to themselves.
Okay. 2 games then this week. So we'll have lots and lots and lots to talk about on next week's podcast. We've got Middlesbrough at home on Wednesday night, and then we go to Manchester City at the weekend. That is Saturday 3 o'clock, isn't it?
It
Man
is.
City,
yeah. Well, let me ask the first question, Matt. I enjoy doing this. Is Middlesbrough must win now that we've just won the last one?
Yes.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Because whether you talk about paper or grass, it is still the easiest game we've got left this season by some distance.
That's what Sunderland. Sunderland have probably got nothing to lose by then, haven't they?
It's a 36-pointer.
It's a several billion pounder.
Well, for rehab, yeah.
I mean, you've got to remember that if we beat Middlesbrough, it's not just about us getting 3 points. It's about pretty much sending Middlesbrough down because, you know, we're the nearest team to them in the division in terms of the way they're looking up at the table at the moment. So we'll what are we, 4 points clear of them at the moment, 7 points clear after a victory on Wednesday night, all being well. Is it 4 points? And then you know, they will feel adrift at that point, and they've got definitely a harder run in than we have.
All being well, we won't be the closest club to Middlesbrough on Wednesday night. If I think Swansea have got a bad one this midweek, and that's before our game. If we can go into our game knowing that a win takes us 4th bottom.
Our record against them is very, very good. We've only played them once at home before in the top tier. That was the infamous 2-1 victory when Marlon King celebrated in rather an unusual manner in London afterwards, having scored the winner from the penalty spot. Remember Bernard Mendy, we thought he'd got the equaliser, but the ball actually hit the post, hit the Middlesbrough keeper and went back in. And the thing is, Borough, I can't remember who scored their goal, but Borough scored quite late on in the game, after what had been something like 75 minutes of an incredibly cagey and equal and nervous game of football. And then we fought back pretty much straight away. It was also our last win for 3 months, that game against Middlesbrough, until we went to Fulham. Famous and infamous, that game, wasn't it?
Indeed.
And then, after they got relegated that season, and of course we went down the season after, we've played them 4 times in the Championship at the Circle since then, and won 3 of them. There was a famous defeat when we lost 4-2 at home. There was a slightly mad game, I think, when we lost 4-2 at home, right towards the end of the season. I remember Anthony Gerrard and Jay Simpson scored for us, but we won 3 against them in the league. I mean, a lot of people don't think that these sort of stats matter when it's you take it on a game-by-game situation. But, you know, they're a team we're capable of beating, both in terms of our recent history and in terms of the form. And they're not going to like, whatever Steve Agnew says, and of course he knows us well, but they're not going to like the fact that not only are we in a bit of form, but we seem to be pushing invincible at home. And they've got to, having failed to get something at Swansea, which was